Welcome to Idaho Bigfoot. I'm your host, Jep. Today we're discussing an important topic for all researchers out in the field. How much Bigfoot would or does eat per day, and how different mammals help us to figure out the biological impact these creatures should have, and the food resources that are needed to support a large mammal in any given environment. To do this, we are once again looking at various different species as a basis to work from. We are specifically looking at three major categories: carnivores, omnivores, and herbivores. I will do a follow-up episode, at least I plan to, on how many animals different carnivores kill per year to figure out what biological impact both a group and just an individual Sasquatch would have on the environment. Guys, this video has taken a good 3 weeks just for me to research and write up. So to shamelessly self-promote myself, please share this video to whomever would enjoy it, and please share it to, whatever page you deem appropriate by clicking the share button down below and copying the link. And please feel free to like and subscribe. It helps out more than you can imagine, believe me. So enough of that. Let's go over a few important disclaimers, and then we'll dive right in. Firstly, I am obviously assuming that Bigfoot exists. I know many have their own theories about its existence or are super skeptical. Everything I share here in this video outside of the details of the known creatures that we discuss here is either speculation or my own opinion, but I do my best to be as factual as possible. Secondly, I'm also not an expert on biology nor Bigfoot, and in all honesty, no one is truly an expert when it comes to Bigfoot or Bigfoot research. Unless we get someone living with a group of Sasquatch and documenting every behavior and idiosyncrasy of the individuals and the group as a whole, much like Jane Goodall did with chimpanzees, no one really knows much about Bigfoot. Now, some people, like Jeff Meldrum, are experts of footprints and anthropology, but none of us know all there is to know about these creatures. And that brings me to my third and final point. If we had our own sightings, we're basing everything we know or believe off of what we saw. Or if we haven't had our own sightings, we're basing everything we believe off of what someone else has seen, trusting that not only are they telling the truth, but they are telling it the way it happened. And I did a video on that recently about how some sightings could be honest but influenced, and I recommend you check that one out. That's also very important for Bigfoot researchers. But enough of that. Why is this an important topic? Well, for a 400 to 600 pound large mammal to not just survive but thrive, it needs enough food. Now, various guesstimates have been made, and this video will surely be one of them, but most use a bear or a human to figure out how much a Bigfoot eats. But what if they're almost strict carnivores or herbivores? A bear is a great candidate, as we will discuss later, but we are only guessing that Bigfoot eats an omnivorous diet. Or we're basing that idea off of supposed eyewitness accounts, which could be faked or simply mistaken once again. So we will look at all options that we can, and you can judge from there. I have done a lot of calculations on this video. I've looked at many sources, and so I put a lot of faith into the information I've put out here for you guys. But I do recommend that you do your own as well. Don't just trust that I'm right, but if you do, I do appreciate that. I do put a lot of work into making sure that I am correct. But there's a lot to look at here, and even from area to area, information as far as the diet of an animal will change greatly. So keep in mind that all of these numbers are generalizations. They are very difficult to really pin down, and sometimes the information that we're going off of are guesstimates, or is a guesstimate, so be aware. But I'm doing this because I found that one of the best ways for trying to figure out something like the potential hearing ability, sense of smell, and sense of sight, of which I did 3 separate videos for each one, for a Sasquatch. Links will be at the end of the video for those videos. I recommend watching them. They do have a key role in Bigfoot research. But anyway, is to find a middle ground between an animal and a human. And that's how we figure out a good idea of what a Bigfoot might have as it senses and how sensitive they may be. But the problem is that humans need to eat massive amounts of food to attain the muscle mass that people report Bigfoot has. I will discuss the amount of food an average man eats, and we'll talk about what strong men eat in a day in just a minute, but in this case I feel that humans are more of a side note in this discussion. We no longer live, and we're talking about the average person here, in a wilderness environment or hunter-gatherers or anything like that. Or those that are like that are hard to study. So basing what Bigfoot would need to eat off of a guy who occasionally goes to the gym and works a desk job is hardly fair for this discussion, in my own opinion. Now, some people believe that Sasquatch are migratory, so a hard to ignore biological impact is non existent. And others believe they are small in population, so the ecological impact is smaller because they aren't numerous. Doubtless, food resources are a must, especially if they're as large as some people report. The more northern the area is, the larger the reports are. Some say they're north of 1,000 pounds. You can imagine the amount of food an animal that size would need to eat, and you'll find out later, too. Without an adequate food supply, any large mammal would surely die of starvation, especially in the northern areas of North America where we experience cold and downright harsh winters. Now, to start us off here, I want to quote Dr. Jeff Meldrum's book, Sasquatch, The Legend Meets Science, where in one chapter he discussed how a paper dismissed the idea Sasquatch could exist in North America because of a lack of brain food, and I thought it was very, very interesting, so let's go over that here. Quote, apes have a somewhat different physiology and life history than monkeys. In an anonymous peer review, a member of the scientific board of the California Academy of Sciences argued that the larger brains of apes required a constant and rich food supply during their development, a requirement that could not be met by the resources of the temperate forests of North America. This conclusion ignores the presence of fatty acids critical to brain development in a diet including meat. These fatty acids are especially concentrated in fish, in particular salmon and cold water species and mountain streams found in the Pacific Northwest and Northeast Asia. Furthermore, the reviewer's opinion conveys an oversimplification of great ape evolutionary history and habitat diversity. For many populations of extant apes living in the tropics, the availability of preferred food resources exhibits marked seasonality. One population of chimpanzees studied occupied a range of nearly 200 square miles with a mere 3% forest cover. Bonobos exhibit a peak in births just after the dry season, presumably to maximize the length of the beneficial rainy season for both lactating mother and infant before the next dry season. Mountain gorillas live in a very cool and wet climate, considering they are found in the tropics, often experiencing sub-freezing temperatures at night. The gorillas typically range between the 9,000 foot and 11,000 foot elevations, but have been tracked as high as 13,500 feet, the lowest elevation at which snow falls on the Virunga Mountains. They have evolved much thicker coverings of hair than their lowland counterparts. The ability of apes to adopt seasonal life histories may have significance for the potential for Sasquatch to adapt to temperate climates. In the subalpine habitats of the temperate rainforests of the Pacific Northwest and Rocky Mountains, there is an impressive abundance of plant and small mammal resources, as I have come to understand through ongoing fieldwork with wildlife biologists and botanists. These potential habitats seem to lie at the core of reported Sasquatch activity. He also talked about the potential diet of Gigantopithecus blacki, a creature many believe is related to Sasquatch or potentially evolved into Sasquatch. Quote, in the past, anthropologists had suggested that Gigantopithecus blacki was a strict herbivore with a highly specialized diet of bamboo, much like the giant panda. There is evidence of tiny silicate pytholiths embedded in some teeth of Gigantopithecus, indicating grasses, bamboo is a grass, in the giant ape's diet. But other evidence from the wear pattern on its teeth indicates a more generalized dietary adaptation. Examination of the pattern of microwear features pits and scratches on the surface of the molar teeth, which shows the greatest similarity between the patterns on the teeth of Gigantopithecus and the omnivorous common chimpanzee. So it appears Gigantopithecus's diet included not only grasses, but also fruit and seeds of woody plants, insects, and a host of other items. As more is learned about the feeding ecology of the great apes, the list of plants eaten continues to grow, in some instances numbering into the hundreds of species. It is also possible that Gigantopithecus supplemented their diets with significant amounts of meat, as is the case with chimpanzees. Hence it appears they were generalized omnivores, rather than specialized grazers of bamboo. This could have permitted them to exploit a much broader range of habitats. We recently bought his book, and I stumbled into all of this, and I wanted to share it with you. I will have links to where you can purchase it online. We bought ours in person when we went through Lewiston, Idaho, in the Idaho Memories Gift and Souvenir Shop, located in downtown Lewiston in Newberry Square. If you live in that area, it is a place to check out. And there's also a small bakery in the same complex that makes delicious treats, by the way. But doubtless, it's a very good book. I haven't had time to read through it all. I was looking through it when I found that. But I really like Jeff Meldrum's way of writing. He had a lot of good information there. I look forward to reading it all the way through. But anyway, doubtless, let's look at one resource that theorized about the caloric intake Bigfoot would need, and it's primarily based on, from what I can tell, what we eat and how much we take in. So let's look at that. It says, based on Bigfoot's possible weight, we can get an approximation of how many calories it would need to consume to survive. For a possible weight of 400 pounds, they theorize 3,300 calories per day. For a possible weight of 800 pounds, 5,500 calories per day. And for a possible weight of 1,000 pounds, 7,000 calories per day. We will circle back to these numbers at the end of the video, by the way. And at the end of the video, we will also summarize all the information that we collected in this video. So if you don't have time, I will have chapters to this video and you can skip right ahead to the end. But anyway, let's just go right through here. Now, for our research today, let's take a quick peek at humans first, like I mentioned earlier. So, per the CDC, the average American man under 40 is 5'9" and weighs 197 pounds. At a moderate activity level, says moderate exercise 3 to 5 times per week, he would need about 2,822 calories per day to maintain his weight. A strong man's diet can go up to 6 times that of a common man's diet. Strong men like Brian Shaw swallow a whole 12,000 calories per day. Interviewed through a video, Brian said, "I am just eating to be the strongest human on the planet." His objective is obtaining power and facilitating performance. No weight cut or calorie deficit. Which isn't surprising, given the guy is 6'8" and weighed up to 440 pounds during his prime. So, he's no small fella. But another American strongman, by the name of Robert Oberst, claims to get down 20,000 calories down his belly. To put it into perspective, that's about 10 times the amount of an average man's daily diet. Jokingly, he said if the average guys could eat his style, they would lose that average feature of them for so long. This resource says, based on USA's number 2 competitor, he makes it work through a 6-meal plan every single day. His wife, however, reveals that it is more like 7 when the midnight snack is counted in. A footage of his weekly grocery bill read $450 after racking them up. Strong men mainly eat for strength and performance. They might look a bit bulkier, but they are also under the athlete's category. The pioneer of the juggernaut strength system, Cha Wesley Smith, put it in order by saying that a strong man combines both strength and technical abilities of the previous endeavors, topped with great lactic requirement, lactic volume, and aerobic capacity. Essentially, strongmen should not only lift, but be able to move. What does this mean? It means that strongmen have to cover every macronutrient base. They technically need enough muscle glycogen, sourced from carbohydrates, to lift and rep out. In addition, they should also have the ability to tap into the flowing creatine stores for single big and heavy lifts. Robert Oberst says of himself to be a machine and a vessel to work. He gives a metaphor of a body in likeness to that of a car. He says if anyone wants his car to run well, then he has better to fuel it. And that is the likeness of the human body. Now, as we'll see in a moment, a lot of animals don't need that much. Or if they do, they don't eat that amount every single day. And they're as strong, if not even far stronger, than a human being that eats that much every day. Now, for example, silverback gorillas, the silverback term is used for referring to adult gorilla males that are dominant individuals. They can lift and throw about 1,800 pounds. That's almost a ton. That's up to 13 times more than the average man, and 696 pounds heavier than the heaviest deadlift in the Guinness World Record book by Hafthor Julius Bjornsson of 1,104 pounds. In addition to lifting strength, silverback gorillas also have a powerful bite of about 1,300 psi. This is twice the bite force of a lion and about 8 times that of a human. Silverback gorillas have a punch force of up to 2,700 pounds, enough to shatter bones with one slam. It's estimated that Mike Tyson in his prime had a punch force of 1,178 foot-pounds. A gorilla still hits with 1,522 pounds more force. Compared to the average man, silverback gorillas have a punch force of about 30 times stronger. Now, that doesn't mean that they go around throwing powerful punches all the time. They're pretty calm animals most of the time, and they like to scare any intruder off rather than just start fighting. But based on their body weight and their maximum speed, a gorilla's punch can have an impact force of 12,500 foot-pounds. That's almost 10.6 times harder than a punch from Iron Mike. Just saying. Now let's get back on topic here. Let's move on to wildlife. This is where the numbers get really important for me. So let's get into the wildlife that we're really interested in today. We will go back to gorillas later on, by the way. Starting off with carnivores, specifically mountain lions. In a single meal, mountain lions can eat anywhere between 20 and 30 pounds of meat, especially if they've recently hunted a large animal. In comparison, humans only eat around 4 pounds of food per day, and that's usually at the very most. After feeding on its kill, the lion will cache the prey or bury it in a secluded spot. The mountain lion will return to feed on the prey for up to 10 days. The range of a mountain lion may cover 25 to 785 square miles. That's a bit of a difference, ain't it? If a mountain lion is 210 pounds, by the way, for it to eat 21 pounds of food, it would be eating 10% of its body weight. These numbers will come in handy later on in the video, by the way. Anyway, one of Colorado's deadliest predators, mountain lions spend a lot of their time stalking and killing prey. Based on a few different data points, here's a rough estimate of how many mule deer Colorado's mountain lions kill each year. First, it's important to note that the majority of mountain lion kills are mule deer, with one recent study indicating that this species makes up to 66% of a mountain lion's kills, half of which are fawns. The study, which looked at mountain lions on the Front Range, indicated that lions killed 1 deer per week on average, with 83% of those killings taking place during the nighttime hours of 10 p.m. to 5 p.m. Keep in mind that this study was conducted in a part of the state with a higher housing density, likely to be more limiting to lions seeking to avoid human contact. The next thing to consider is how many mountain lions roam Colorado statewide. An August 2021 report from Colorado Parks and Wildlife indicates that somewhere between 3,800 and 4,400 mature lions are found in the state, not accounting for dependent young. In the case of determining total kills, dependent young don't play much of a role, as adult lions will typically be the one taking down the prey for their offspring. If every adult lion is killing around 1 mule deer per week, that would mean that 3,800 mountain lions killing 1 deer per week would result in 197,600 deer deaths annually in Colorado. If 4,400 lions are hunting, that number increases to 228,800 deer. A post-hunting season estimate of Colorado's deer population in 2020 indicated that around 427,570 deer were present statewide, with the higher end of the estimated mountain lion deer killings being 228,800. That's more than half of this total count. In other words, life as a deer is hard and will probably end at the jaws of a mountain lion. Nature is brutal indeed. I really do agree with that article. It's more brutal than I think a lot of people really even understand. So, doesn't mean it ain't sad, but it is what it is. Now let's move on to a very controversial animal, that's for sure, at least here in Idaho, wolves. On an average, wolves eat 9 pounds of meat per wolf per day during winter. Although the wolf is capable of eating large quantities of food in a short time, such quantities are not always available. Thus, wild wolves may have to go for several days at a time without eating. Wolves probably could fast for periods of 2 weeks or more while searching for vulnerable prey. When food is available, wolves can replenish themselves to prepare for another period of fasting. With its large stomach capacity, the wolf seems well adapted for this cycle of feasting and extended fasting. Getting enough to eat is a full-time job for a wolf. When wolves catch and kill a large mammal, they will gorge and then rest while the food is being rapidly digested. They will generally consume all but the hide, some of the large bones and skull, and the rumen, that being the stomach contents of the ungulates of their prey. Gray wolves can survive on about 2.5 pounds of food per wolf per day, but they require about 5 to 7 pounds to reproduce successfully. The most a large gray wolf can eat at one time is 22.5 pounds. Adult wolves can survive for days and even weeks without food if they have to. Growing pups, however, require regular nourishment in order to be strong enough to travel and then hunt with the adults by the autumn of their first year. Wolves often rely on food they have cached after a successful hunt in order to see them through lean times. For a wolf that weighs about 110 pounds, eating 7 pounds of food is roughly 7% of its body weight. Now, it says that red wolves may eat 2 to 5 pounds of food per day when prey is abundant. Because they are smaller than gray wolves, they can consume less at one time than their larger cousins. But like all wolves, eating for red wolves is a matter of feast, followed by famine. Wolves depend on a variety of large ungulates or hoofed animals for food. Although studies have been conducted in some areas to determine the actual number of prey killed each year, the results are estimates. For example, an estimate for deer equivalent ranges from 15 to 19 adult-sized deer per wolf per year. Equivalent refers to the mass of deer consumed by wolves, not individual deer. Given the 2013 estimate of 2,200 wolves in Minnesota, for instance, that would equal 33,000 to 41,800 deer killed by wolves. In comparison, hunters killed approximately 128,814 deer during the 2013 firearms deer harvest season. Additionally, several thousand deer are killed during collisions with vehicles each year. Now, what about one of my favorite animals, the Siberian tiger? Well, Amur tigers are known to consume animals such as Siberian musk deer, Siberian roe deer, wild boar, long-tailed goral, Manchurian sika deer, moose, Ussuri brown bear, and Manchurian wapiti. These are all part of the tiger's staple diet. Amur tigers will also prey on large animals, including brown bear cubs or Asian bears, but they do not usually prefer animals such as these. Wild boar are abundantly found in the oak forest, so tigers prey on these animals. The reason why brown bears can sometimes confront Siberian tigers is that they both feed on elk and moose. Tigers will find their next prey for almost over a week. In winters, however, they kill animals every 4 to 5 days. Amur tigers are known to eat as much as 17.4 pounds a day. That means if an average male Siberian tiger, and I mean presently average, not 80 years ago, weighs 475 pounds and eats 17.4 pounds of food, it is eating roughly 3.68% of its body weight. The Siberian tiger is the biggest tiger in the world, with adults reaching up to 12 feet in length. The largest specimen known was shot in Sungari River in 1943. It had a length of 11.48 feet, with the tail adding up to 39 inches. The biggest Amur tiger weighed as much as 660 pounds, meaning that we do not need to scale up the food consumption to match that of a Sasquatch-sized creature. They're already there. For example, if we take that 660-pound tiger like we mentioned, and it was to eat that 3.68% of its body weight, then it would eat about 24.28 pounds of food. However, if we take into account what Tom Brakefield said in his book, Big Cat's Kingdom of Might, a good book by the way, about a similar subspecies of tiger, the Bengal tiger, then these are measly amounts of food. Let me show you what I mean. To quote from his book, it says, though the Bengal or Indian tiger, Panthera tigris, may reach the same lengths as the Siberian tiger, it is less massive, and its coat varies from light yellow to reddish yellow with black stripes. The longest accurately measured Bengal tiger, recorded in 1907, stretched 10 feet 7 inches, of which 3 feet 7 inches was tail, and weighed a surprisingly light 491 pounds. A huge male killed in Nepal in 1942 weighed 705 pounds, while another giant killed in India in 1910 weighed 700 pounds and spanned 9 feet 11 and a half inches in length. However, all of these were dwarfed by a gigantic cat killed in northern India in 1967, which measured 10 feet 7 inches in length and weighed a mind-boggling 857 pounds. Now this is perhaps a bit inflated, as the cat had just killed a buffalo the previous evening and had probably eaten heavily. Scientist George B. Schaller says that a tiger can eat as much as 20% of its body weight in one sitting, meaning that in theory this cat could have eaten as much as 140 pounds of meat. However, even taking this into account, the tiger might have weighed at least 715 pounds with an empty stomach. Still, a feline colossus. So what this means is that if they truly can eat up to 20% of their body weight, then the 660-pound giant could eat up to 132 pounds of meat a day, and the 475-pound average cat could eat 95 pounds of meat. So taking the first estimation of 17.4 pounds and the estimation of 95 pounds and simply averaging the two together, we get an average of 56 pounds of food, or about 11.8% of a 475-pound cat's body weight. That is the number that we will go with for the video today. Now let's look at the king of the jungle, even though he's actually the king of the savannah, the African lion. Lions stand between 3.5 to 4 feet tall at the shoulder. Males grow to lengths of 10 feet and have a 2 to 3 foot long tail. They weigh from 330 to 420 pounds on average, occasionally reaching about 550 pounds. Slightly smaller, females grow to lengths of 9 feet and weigh between 265 to 395 pounds. The amount of food a lion eats per day depends on their size and sex. Large male lions may eat around 10 pounds of meat per day, while a smaller female lion is able to get by on 5 pounds. Again, though, this is an average. But taking those averages, that means that a 420-pound large male lion that eats 10 pounds of food is eating 2.4% of its body weight. Most lions don't eat every day, whether in captivity or in the wild. Lions usually hunt and eat medium-sized to large hoofed animals like wildebeests, zebras, and antelopes. They occasionally also prey on larger animals, especially sick or injured ones, and often found meat, such as carrion. Now, what about leopards? Leopards vary greatly in size and markings. The average size is between 110 to 200 pounds in weight. In the Kalahari, it is recorded that male leopards consume 7.7 pounds of food per day. Females consume 10.8 pounds a day when they were with cubs. In the Tsavo National Park, male leopards consume 4 to 20 pounds per night. We'll choose an average of 8 pounds of food, which means that a 200-pound leopard eating 8 pounds of food is eating roughly 4% of its body weight. But in the Nagarhole National Park, leopards spent an average of 2.1 days with each kill, and they consumed an average of 24.69 pounds of food per day, which means a 200-pound leopard, if eating 24 pounds of food, is eating 12% of its body weight. The leopard is a carnivore that prefers medium-sized prey with a body mass ranging from 22 to 88 pounds. Prey species in this weight range tend to occur in dense habitat and the form small herds. Species that prefer open areas and have well-developed anti-predator strategies are less preferred. More than 100 prey species have been recorded, including gorillas. The most preferred species are ungulates, such as impala, bushbuck, common duiker, and cheetal. Primates preyed upon include white-eyelid mangabeys, guanons, and gray langurs, and of course the gorillas that I talked about as well, although those are less common. Anyway, leopards also kill smaller carnivores like black-backed jackal, bat-eared fox, genet, and cheetah. The largest prey killed by a leopard was reportedly a male eland weighing 2,000 pounds. A study in Wolong National Nature Reserve in southern China demonstrated variation in the leopard's diet over time. Over the course of 7 years, the vegetative cover receded, and leopards opportunistically shifted from primarily consuming tufted deer to pursuing bamboo rats and other smaller prey. As carnivores mainly living in grasslands or savannas, their preferred meals are ungulate animals like antelopes, gazelles, and buffalo. They're also fond of other mid-sized animals like deer, warthogs, and primates. But in mountainous regions, leopards feast on animals like porcupines, rodents, and rock hyraxes. In rainforests, they opt for antelopes, and on islands, they have a more fish-focused diet. But leopards who live on islands are not very fond of swimming, so they'll prey on fish only if they need to. They'll swim in rivers or dams and snack on just about any fish species they find. So now let's talk about omnivores. First, let's talk about feral pigs and wild hogs. The two can be very, very similar. We often refer to wild hogs when we're actually talking about feral pigs here in the United States, although there are European wild boars. Nowadays, they're just feral pigs because there's so many domesticated animals that are mixed in, and a lot of them were domesticated animals that got loose to begin with, that feral pigs is the more accurate term. But doubtless, males and females differ in size and weight, with male feral pigs being longer and taller than females and weighing more at comparable ages. The weight of the average adult female feral pig is 110 to 132 pounds, whereas males usually weigh 176 to 220 pounds. However, this weight can vary with habitat conditions, and exceptional animals have reached up to 573 pounds. Now, it's said that small pigs may eat approximately 5% of their body weight daily, and larger pigs an estimated 3% of their body weight. If we take a 300-pound pig that's eating 3% of its body weight, that equals about 9 pounds of food. Wild pigs are opportunistic omnivores, meaning they feed on plant and animal matter in addition to being able to play the role of a scavenger. They are largely indiscriminate in their feeding habits and eat both vertebrate and invertebrate animals. Approximately 85 to 90% of their diet is believed to be composed of vegetation, including crops where available, and 10% animal matter. Now, what about the black bear? Well, adults range from 4 to 6 feet in length and weigh between 132 to 661 pounds, although those are not very common in most places. The largest male is growing to 6 foot 6 inches in length and 902 pounds, which is even less common if you can imagine. Males can be up to 70% heavier than females. Black bears must eat between 11 and 18 pounds of food per day to stay healthy. So if we take a black bear that weighs 400 pounds, which is pretty large, that eats 16 pounds of food, it is eating approximately 4% of its body weight. Black bears hibernate during the winter months. This means that they rest or go to sleep for a long time without even needing to eat. Before hibernation, the bears need to store up extra fat so they can survive the winter. After spending the winter months hibernating, black bears are now emerging from their dens. Once they leave their dens, they are now hungry bears and will immediately start looking for food. Mostly spring grasses, but pretty much anything that can provide easy calories. During hibernation, black bears survive by burning fat reserves. A boar, or male, black bear usually loses 15 to 30% of its body weight, while a sow with cubs can lose up to 40% of her body weight. After emerging from hibernation, black bears are on a quest to eat between 15,000 and 20,000 calories to replenish fat reserves before winter sets in again, which means they are constantly searching for food. So, it does depend on the animal, but some of them do compete with the strongman's diet as far as how many calories they eat, and bears are one of those animals. Let's look at the grizzly bear now, though, an even bigger animal. Actually, much bigger sometimes, with the average grizzly being around 3.5 feet tall at the shoulders and weighing in at about 400 to 700 pounds on average in the lower 48 to almost 1,000 pounds in Alaska. How much food does a grizzly eat per day? Well, they may intake up to 90 pounds of food each day, gaining over 2.2 pounds of body weight a day. As omnivores, grizzlies will eat anything nutritious they can find, gorging on nuts, fruit, leaves, roots, fungi, insects, and a variety of animals, including salmon and other fish, rodents, sheep, and elk. If we take a large grizzly weighing 750 pounds, that eats 90 pounds of food, it is eating 12% of its body weight. 750-pound animals have been found in places like British Columbia and Alberta and northern Idaho. So that's not too terribly large for our comparison today, I don't think. But that is a very large animal, definitely on the upper side of things. But anyway, grizzlies once lived in much of western North America and even roamed the Great Plains. These animals need a lot of space. Their home range can encompass up to 600 square miles, so their ideal habitat is one that is isolated from development and has plenty of food and places to dig their dens. Now let's look at chimpanzees. The eating sessions of chimpanzees are much longer than ours, and chimps spend hours every day looking for food and actually eating it. One study found that an average chimp spends 54.9% of its wake time feeding. That's because their eating sessions consist of multiple bouts of eating, each taking anywhere from 1 to 45 minutes. The same study found that an average adult chimp has about 12 such eating bouts every day, eating over 1.2 pounds of food per bout. A 150-pound large male chimp that eats 14 pounds of food per day is eating 9.6% of its body weight. A chimpanzee is omnivorous, and so they feed on all kinds of vegetation and animals as its diet. Every subspecies has totally different dietary preferences and habits, primarily based on the place they live in. The 160 or so chimpanzees dwelling on the Shemponga, I know I'm not saying that one right, I'm sorry, sanctuary eat 17,000 kilos, or if my calculations are correct, that equals about 37,400 pounds of meals each month. If that's right, then that's plenty of figs. They eat fruits, berries, nuts, leaves, stems, seeds, and bark. The carnivorous portion of their diet incorporates a wide range of bugs and invertebrates, eggs, small mammals, monkeys, and sometimes chimpanzees from different groups. They've even been known to attack gorillas, and in one case, actually took a young one, which is very sad. It's been noticed that chimps prefer eating fruits early in the morning and shift to munching down on leaves in the afternoon because that's when they're more nutritious compared to early in the day. However, the specific diet varies from day to day and is primarily determined by the availability of the food. If a chimp comes upon a huge termite colony in the morning, then it's going to feast on that instead of harvesting fruit. For the sake of the video, let's assume that vegetation makes up to 65% of their diet. Now let's move on to herbivores, starting off with a classic, the American bison. Bison, also known as buffalo here, but it's correctly called bison, have a maximum height of 6 feet at the shoulder. A female, which is called a cow, can weigh roughly 900 pounds, where a male can weigh up to a ton, or 2,000 pounds. Compared to the American bison, European bison are slightly taller but squatter. American bison inhabit grassy valleys, prairies, and plains. They also roam freely in hilly or mountainous terrains with gentle slopes. Bison live in small groups that are called bands. One or more females and several generations of their offspring are the basic units. Bison's diet consists of grass and herbs, but they will eat twigs and leaves as well. Bison are herbivorous grazers with ruminant digestion and more stomachs. Most species have a similar diet with slight differences. The American bison are vegetarian nomads. Their diet consists of about 93% grass, 5% flowering shrubs, and 2% forest vegetation. Bison must eat 1.6% of their body weight per day to stay healthy. For a large 2,000-pound male, that equals about 32 pounds of food. Now what about mustangs? Even though they aren't a native species, they have been here for quite some time, and I think there's some stuff that we can learn from them. Well, mustangs are herbivores that graze a variety of grasses and may consume up to 6 pounds of food per day. They weigh about 800 pounds on average. An 800-pound Mustang eating 6 pounds of food is eating 0.75% of its body weight. Mustangs are found in the United States and Canada. They take about 2 sips of water from lakes or streams each day. The perennial grasses on the rangelands provide the majority of a wild horse's diet. Species of grass such as Indian ricegrass, deergrass, Great Basin wild rye, and wheatgrass are native in North America. Bermuda grass is an invasive type that has been popular in recent years. Certain aspects of weed plants are also consumed by these feral horses. Dandelion and clover plants can be hard to find, but are grazed upon if available. Others may include thistles, sunflower, primrose, and echinacea. Another aspect of a Mustang's diet can include various trees, shrubs, and even soil. They may purposefully ingest soil which is high in nutrients like calcium, potassium, and sodium. Wild horses have been known to nibble on shrubs and branches like yucca, sage, juniper, maple, and willow. Now what about the moose? Well, a typical moose, weighing about 794 pounds, at least in the lower 48, can eat up to 71 pounds of food per day. Moose are browsers and will casually devour 73 pounds a day in the summer and 34 pounds in the winter. They eat an assortment of shrubs, woody plants, and aquatic vegetation. In the winter, their diet is more restricted, so they eat the buds of plants. If a moose weighing 794 pounds eats 71 pounds of food, it is eating roughly 9% of its body weight. Now what about elk, or wapiti? An adult elk can consume 24 pounds of food every day. According to RMEF, a bull elk weighs about 700 pounds on average. The Thule elk, 400 pounds, and the Roosevelt's elk, 900 pounds. If a bull elk weighing 700 pounds eats 24 pounds of food, it is eating 3.5% of its body weight. Elk have an inclination to try and do most of their feeding within the mornings and evenings. They seek secure areas in between feeding and digesting the food. Elk also supplement their diet at licks. They absorb minerals that will facilitate them to grow healthy coats and turn out nutrient milk, as well as grow their beautiful antlers. Elk love to feed on wild mushrooms, different forbs, ferns, and legumes. Teeth additionally play a crucial role within the elk's consumption habits. Cervids have sharp incisors for biting off plants and broad and flat molars for mashing plants. Now what about mule deer? Well, mule deer will usually eat approximately 2 pounds of dry food daily for every 100 pounds of its weight. This species is quite large, and some individuals can stand over 42 inches tall at the shoulder. Most weigh no more than 331 pounds, but some individuals have reached up to 460 pounds. If we take a 300-pound mule deer and it eats 6 pounds of food, it is eating about 2% of its body weight. Now there are 10 different subspecies, some of which vary greatly in size and color. Like their whitetail cousins, females do not have antlers. Mule deer are a larger type of deer that live in more remote areas. While white-tailed deer do well in many different kinds of environments and prefer living near human agriculture and habitations, mule deer are different and need to be in the true wilderness. At least to a degree, because I know locally I have found them right in town, sometimes very large towns too, and they're right in someone's front yard, and they are not white-tailed deer. So I think this does kind of vary depending on the area. So keep that in mind. I do call it out when I hear something that isn't quite true, at least in my experience, and that's one of those things. I don't think that affects the rest of this information, though. Anyway, a mule deer will have a much larger home range than a whitetail. One reason for this is the fact that mule deer need more space to find all the food that they need to survive. Mule deer living in the Rocky Mountains tend to spend their summers at high elevation and alpine habitats. That is where they tend to find the most food. When they do have to deal with high snowdrifts during the winter, mule deer will tend to travel downhill where they can more easily find food in low elevation sagebrush habitats. Mule deer are similar to whitetail deer in that they are mainly browsers instead of grazers. An example of a grazer is elk. As deer are mainly browsers, they prefer shrubs and forbs instead of grass. As mentioned earlier, though, they do like young grass shoots in the spring. In the winter, mule deer will gravitate to aspen shoots, mahogany, and sagebrush for food sources. Now, what about whitetail deer? Well, whitetail deer eat a variety of foods available to browse on in their native habitat. Once again, this includes twigs and leaves, forbs, nuts, grasses, mushrooms, and fruits. The foods that make up the most of a whitetail deer's diet depends on what is available in that specific time of year. Forbs are usually a favorite food of whitetail deer. These weeds are full of nutrients that deer need, and they are especially easy for the animal to digest. A whitetail deer needs to eat 2% of its body mass every day with a minimum protein content of 6% in order to just maintain muscle. This is the minimum threshold for a deer to maintain weight. The general consensus among biologists is that whitetails need approximately 16% protein during the antler growing/fawning period from early spring through summer. 11% would be representative of quality native habitat such as found in South Texas. A study in Alabama showed an average annual protein level of 7% in the natural habitat, which would be representative of much of the rest of the Southeast as well. Meaning that a 150-pound buck eating 3 pounds of food is equal to 2% of its body mass. However, these weeds aren't around for much of the year. After all, long dry periods in the winter can stop their growth. Browse plants include young trees and shrubs that the deer can reach. There will be browse plants available in some form every time of the year. While it's true that these plants will lose all their leaves for the winter, there will still be the twigs and stems for deer to eat, and since deer are herbivores, they'll enjoy these. While white-tailed deer will eat grass, it's usually not one of their favorite food items. Adult deer require 6 to 10% protein to maintain a normal metabolism. Yearlings, on the other hand, require 12% for normal body maintenance and growth. As you can probably imagine, the highest protein requirements come from growing fawns, 16 to 20%, does in late pregnancy, 11 to 15%, and does during lactation, 14 to 22%. Now, what about bighorn sheep? Well, bighorn sheep are herbivores, and their diet consists primarily of grasses and sedges. They'll also eat leaves, flowers, and twigs if necessary. And during the winter months, when food is scarce, bighorn sheep will dig through the snow to find food. Bighorn sheep need to eat around 2% of their body weight each day. For a 150-pound sheep, this amounts to around 3 pounds of food per day. Bighorn sheep will often eat in the morning and evening with a break in the middle of the day to rest. While bighorn sheep can survive on a diet of mostly grasses, they do need to consume some other plants to get the nutrients they need. Bighorn sheep will commonly eat forbs and shrubs to supplement their diet. It's difficult to determine exactly how much bighorn sheep eat in a day, as they are constantly on the move and their diet can vary depending on the season and the availability of food. However, we do know that these sheep are able to survive on very little food and water, which is a testament to their amazing adaptation to their environment. What about gorillas? Well, gorillas are herbivores, and thus they mainly consume a vegetarian diet. These include young branches, leaves, fruits and seeds, buds, roots, stems, and bark. You may also find gorillas eating the pith of wood. As much as gorillas are herbivores, you may also find them eating insects, including termites, ants, and the like. Interestingly enough, you may also find them eating ash and soil in small quantities. These materials are believed to help regulate their digestive system. An adult gorilla can consume 40 to 44 pounds of food daily. A 500-pound male gorilla, if eating 40 pounds of food, is eating 8% of its body weight. Mountain gorillas are also not particular about water intake. There are 2 reasons for this. The first reason is that they are herbivores, which means they feed on fresh plants and leaves. These leaves provide enough water intake. The second reason is that mountain gorillas live in high altitude areas. This means the surrounding temperature is low and they don't lose large amounts of water to the temperature. This also reduces the need for water most of the time. It is impossible to generalize the diet of all gorillas. There are two species with two subspecies each, and they all inhabit different areas. The eastern gorilla is far from its western relative, and since they live in specific regions at different altitudes with particular vegetation in each place, the components of their diet often differ from species to species, between subspecies, and even according to the season of the year. The western lowland gorilla subspecies, also known as gorilla, eat the fruits of more than 100 species of trees, 97 of which produce fruit seasonally. About 67% of their diet are fruit, 17% leaves, and the rest are seeds, stems, caterpillars, ants, and termites. Now, what about orangutans? Well, this one took a lot more digging to find info on, I can tell you that much. Here's what I did find. While orangutans eat a wide variety of forest foods, their preferred food is fruit. Some large male orangutans can weigh up to 200 pounds. Depending on season and location, orangutans can feed on hundreds of different species of wild fruits. Whole, soft fruits like wild fig and guava, but also fruits with hard exteriors like durian and coconut, which require cracking, peeling, and breaking to reach the pulp and seeds within. Orangutans also eat young shoots and leaves, peel bark to get to the soft edible cambium underneath, honey, insects, and eggs. After a lot of research and a bit of math, I was able to calculate that an average male orangutan can eat 1,912 calories in a day, or about 9.72 pounds of durian fruit, meaning that a 180-pound male orangutan can eat 5.4% of its body weight. Now, this is the important part. This is where we get to summarize all the information. So let's look at carnivores. If a mountain lion weighing 210 pounds eats 21 pounds of food, it's eating 10% of its body weight. If a wolf weighing 110 pounds eats 7 pounds of food, it's eating roughly 7% of its body weight. If a Siberian tiger weighing 475 pounds eats 56 pounds of food, it's eating 11.8% of its body weight. If a 420-pound African lion eats 10 pounds of food, it's eating 2.4% of its body weight. And last but certainly not least, if a leopard weighing 200 pounds eats 20 pounds of food, it's eating roughly 10% of its body weight. Now, what about omnivores? Well, if a pig weighing 300 pounds eats 9 pounds of food, it is eating 3% of its body weight. If a black bear weighing 400 pounds eats 16 pounds of food, it is eating approximately 4% of its body weight. If a grizzly bear weighing 750 pounds eats 90 pounds of food, it is eating 12% of its body weight. If a chimpanzee weighing 150 pounds eats 14 pounds of food, it is eating 9.6% of its body weight. Now, what about herbivores? Well, if an American bison weighing 2,000 pounds eats 32 pounds of food, it is eating 1.6% of its body weight. If a Mustang weighing 800 pounds eats 6 pounds of food, it is eating 0.75% of its body weight. If a moose weighing 794 pounds eats 71 pounds of food, it is eating roughly 9% of its body weight. If a bull elk weighing 700 pounds eats 24 pounds of food, it is eating 3.5% of its body weight. If a mule deer weighing 300 pounds eats 6 pounds of food, it is eating 2% of its body weight. If a white-tailed deer weighing 150 pounds eats 3 pounds of food, it is eating 2% of its body weight. If a bighorn sheep weighing 150 pounds eats 3 pounds of food, it is eating 2% of its body weight. If a gorilla weighing 500 pounds eats 40 pounds of food, it is eating 8% of its body weight. If an orangutan weighing 180 pounds eats 9.72 pounds of durian fruit, it is eating 5.4% of its body weight. Alright, so let's summarize these. Looking at carnivores, the average weight is 283 pounds. The average consumption is 22.8 pounds of food, which averages to 8.24% of their body weight being consumed. Now, if we're looking at 22.8 pounds of venison, that contains approximately 14,375 calories. And 22.8 pounds of elk meat contains approximately 17,784 calories. And last but certainly not least, 22.8 pounds of feral hog meat contains approximately 12,608.4 calories. Now, as far as omnivores go, their average weight is 400 pounds, with an average consumption of 32.25 pounds of food, which is an average of 7.15% of their body weight consumed. 80.83% of their diet is vegetation, and 19.17% of their diet is meat. Now, as far as herbivores go, the average weight is 619.33 pounds, with an average consumption of 21.63 pounds of food, and an average of 3.80% of their body weight consumed. Now, what does all this mean? Well, if we look at 4 different body sizes, 300 pounds, 500 pounds, 800 pounds, and 1,000 pounds, well, if it's a carnivore, a 300-pound creature would eat 24.72 pounds of food, a 500-pound animal would eat 41.2 pounds of food, an 800-pound animal would eat just under 66 pounds of food, and a 1,000-pound animal would eat 82.4 pounds of food. If it's an omnivore, well, a 300-pound animal would eat 21.45 pounds of food per day, a 500-pound animal would eat 35.75 pounds of food, an 800-pound animal would eat 57 pounds of food, and a 1,000-pound animal would eat 71.5 pounds of food. And lastly, if it's a herbivore, a 300-pound animal would eat 11.4 pounds of food, a 500-pound animal would eat 19 pounds of food, an 800-pound animal would eat 30.4 pounds of food, and a 1,000-pound animal would eat 38 pounds of food. So that's a lot of info there. But let's circle back to the estimate for how much Bigfoot would need to eat that we quoted before, which was estimated at 400 pounds being 3,300 calories per day, an 800-pound animal eating 5,500 calories per day, and a 1,000-pound animal eating 7,000 calories per day. Well, if they're carnivorous, say once again that they're eating elk meat, the 400-pounder would be eating 4.3 pounds of meat, the 800-pounder would be eating 7.1 pounds, and the 1,000-pounder would be eating just about 9 pounds, which is much less than the 24.72 pounds, the 41.2 pounds, the 66 pounds, and the 82.4 pounds that we estimated for the various different animal sizes. But if it's a herbivore, let's say they're eating elderberries, which I chose because they're easy to find in my area, and they contain a good bit of calories, about 336 per pound. Keep in mind that 1 pound of mushrooms contains 96 calories, and a pound of cultivated sweet beets contain 3,120 calories. So this varies greatly. But elderberries are somewhat in the middle, so that's what I'm going with, okay? So going off the numbers that they estimated, a 400-pound animal would be eating about 9.8 pounds of elderberries. An 800-pound animal would need to eat about 16.3 pounds, and a 1,000-pound animal would need to eat 20.8 pounds. Once again, that is less than the 11.4 pounds, the 19 pounds, the 30.4 pounds, and lastly the 38 pounds of food that we estimated for the 300, 500, 800, and 1,000-pound animals. Lastly, let's look at an omnivore, and we'll use the estimate of 81% vegetative matter and 19% meat. A 400-pound animal would eat about 8 pounds of elderberries and just under 1 pound of elk meat. An 800-pound animal would eat about 13.3 pounds of elderberries and 1.34 pounds of elk meat. And a 1,000-pound animal would eat 16.9 pounds of elderberries and 1.7 pounds of elk meat. And that's all assuming that Bigfoot would only eat that amount of each, by the way. It wants that heart-healthy, balanced diet, don't it? But that is, once again, less than the numbers that we estimated, which would be 21.45 pounds, 35.75 pounds, 57 pounds, and 71.5 pounds of food for, once again, the 300, 500, 800, and 1,000-pound animals accordingly. Now, I personally believe my numbers are more accurate, but you can judge for yourselves. Doubtless, small game like grouse, rabbits, squirrels, woodchucks, and porcupines, to aquatic and semi-aquatic creatures like frogs, salamanders, turtles, ducks, loons, herons, trout, catfish, and all sorts of small animals, as well as things like turkeys, deer, elk, moose, feral pigs, muskox, bighorn, and Dall sheep, and all assortment of animals, all contain, at least to a certain degree, the necessary protein, fat, minerals, and nutrients needed to support a creature the size of Bigfoot. Even some plant life, like aquatic plants, are highly nutritious, not counting the human-grown food. Remember, those sweet beets contain over 3,000 calories per pound, which in the southern areas, I know there's a lot of hunters that I talk to who live in the south, they plant a lot of those beets so the deer can eat well. So that is something that is available in those areas that isn't really common in my area unless it's in a garden. But anyway, let's assume that Bigfoot is a carnivore. Because for me, it would explain the lack of constant sightings in any one area if they roam like wolves and other predators do. I mean, imagine a 600 square mile area is quite large. It would also explain the lack of fecal matter, as vegetative matter, at least in humans and many animals, is much harder to absorb, and thus more poop is made. Predators poop far less, and it typically only contains hair when they do. Carnivore poop also doesn't smell as bad. I can always tell when cows have been in a section of forest, not just by the large number of cow patties, believe me, there can be a lot of them, but also by the smell. Bigfoot being a carnivore would also explain their behavior better. They are elusive and like to observe humans from behind cover, but don't tend to flee very far. It would also go hand in hand with the theory that Bigfoot is behind several missing 411 cases, several of which I've covered. According to some, they seem to approach trail cameras from behind, much like they would a prey animal, investigating it from its blind spot. If that's true, that's consistent with a cautious predator rather than a prey animal. The next question I need to ask is how many game animals are needed to support a small population of wood apes? That's something I hope to discuss in the next video. Anyway, guys, I hope you liked this video. Please comment down below your thoughts. I will have a lot of this information that I collected, such as the caloric, the amount of calories that are contained in different fruits, vegetables, and different meats that I could find. And I'll put that in the description box below. That should give you at least a good idea of what they might contain. Of course, it isn't going to be 100% accurate, but that, as well as the numbers I gave you, if you want to try and figure out how much these creatures would eat in your own area, go ahead and try that and let me know what you can come up with. I was going to go into that more in this video, but I decided I just did not have enough time, as you can see by the length of this video already. But again, please feel free to share this video anywhere you like by clicking the share button and copying the link. And also please like this video if you can and help me get to my 1,000 subscriber mark so I can start benefiting from all my hard work. I really appreciate it, guys. I don't do this for the money, but it would certainly help. And if you could click that bell icon after you click the subscribe button, it will notify you when I come out with another new video. I have a whole bunch of things I want to try and get done. We'll see if they work out well. But yeah, I think I'll let you guys go now. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.